You've probably heard this one. If you've made it past 75, well, whatever happens now is just nature taking its course. Sounds peaceful, right? But here's the truth, dear one. That's not dharma. That's denial. Because while impermanence is real, so is choice. And most people over 75 don't pass from old age. They pass from 7 specific, often preventable causes. Each one sneaky, each one misunderstood. Welcome to Buddhist Wisdom for the Elderly, where we believe aging isn't a slow decline. It's a sacred path, a spiritual practice in slowing down, waking up, and laughing at ourselves. Kindly. Today, we'll explore 7 causes of death after 75 that most people don't see coming, until it's too late. And when we get to part 5, you'll want to lean in. It's about loneliness, a quiet, unseen suffering that steals more lives than we realize. And when you learn how to meet it with presence, connection, and a bit of sacred mischief, you don't just live longer, you live better. You remember you still matter. So stay with us. Like this video and subscribe to help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. It keeps the teachings flowing and this little sangha growing. Now take a breath. You're not fading, you're ripening. Let's begin. 1. Stroke, the thief in the night. You know, strokes are funny. Not funny, haha. Funny like your arm suddenly doesn't work while you're buttering toast. Or you go to speak, and instead of words, out comes something that sounds like jazz. The messy kind. And then, poof, you're on the floor wondering what day it is or if toast was ever real to begin with. That's if you're lucky enough to notice. A lot of folks don't. They get a little dizzy, a little numb, maybe the world tilts sideways for a second, and they say, oh, I just need to lie down. And by the time they get back up, if they do, everything has changed. That's why I call it the thief in the night. It just walks right in, uses the spare key under the mat. But here's the part that'll blow your beautifully aging mind. Up to 80% of strokes are preventable. That's not me being idealistic in a robe. That's the American Stroke Association talking. And those folks aren't exactly known for sitting cross-legged and chanting Om. So why are strokes still so common? Because they come not just from the body, but from what we don't see, what we don't feel, what we don't bother to feel. They're not just clots and bursts. They're the spiritual consequences of not paying attention. Take high blood pressure, for instance. It doesn't shout. It's more of a quiet conspiracy. You don't feel it, but it's there, pushing, pressing, testing the pipes. Until one day, the pipe pops. Or atrial fibrillation, such a poetic name for such a sneaky little rhythm. Like your heart's trying to dance but forgets the steps. Blood pools, clots form. And if one of those clots decides to head north, you've got yourself a neurological coup d'etat. Now, I'm not here to scare you. I'm just playing the role of the gentle bell, the one that rings when it's time to wake up. The Buddha said everything is connected, and nowhere is that clearer than in your body. Your brain and your heart are not roommates, they're lovers. What hurts one hurts the other. What heals one heals both. Let me tell you about Louis. Louis was 77. He fixed watches and talked about time like it was a cousin he used to wrestle with. One day, he stood outside his own shop, key in hand, and couldn't remember how to open the door. Just stood there, blank. 10 minutes later, he was fine. Called it a senior moment. 2 weeks later, he had a stroke that took half his speech and most of his independence. Turns out that first episode was a TIA, a mini stroke. But really, it was a dress rehearsal, the universe whispering, hey buddy, pay attention. So please, if you ever feel strange, slurred speech, blurry vision, a wonky arm, a sudden stumble, don't lie down. Call someone, get checked. Better to feel silly at the hospital than to miss your granddaughter's wedding. Now, let's talk protection. Not the bubble wrap kind. The conscious kind. Move, walk, stretch, wiggle, dance slowly in the kitchen while you wait for tea. Eat with love. Leafy greens, berries, nuts, and fats that came from something that had a mother or grew in the sun. Drink water, not soda. Water. Your brain loves water. Know your numbers, blood pressure, cholesterol, rhythm. Be curious about your own stats. And don't forget the mind. Read something, talk to someone, learn how to play the ukulele or speak Icelandic. Not because you'll be fluent, because your brain likes puzzles. It likes surprise. See, when you stimulate your brain, you build back roads. So even if one major highway gets blocked, the traffic of your life can still get through. And that, my friend, is what we call cognitive reserve. Not as sexy as enlightenment, but a lot more useful on Tuesday morning. In the end, strokes teach us the same lesson as the Dharma. Don't take anything for granted. The ability to speak, to think, to lift your fork or say your grandchild's name, these are miracles disguised as routines. So keep the lights on, lock the door, and stay awake. When the thief comes, may he find you ready, still breathing, still dancing, still very much here. Number 2, falls and injuries. The ground beneath your feet. There's an old Zen saying, when you fall, dive into the ground completely. Now that's beautiful. Metaphorically, spiritually, sure. But let's be honest, after 72, falling isn't a poetic surrender to the moment. It's more like, well, there goes my hip again. The ground stops feeling like a place to center yourself and starts looking like an old adversary with a grudge. But here's the real teaching. A fall isn't just a moment, it's a message. It's your body whispering, hey, I'm starting to lose my footing. Literally, maybe we check in? The problem is, most of us ignore whispers until they start shouting. And by then, we're horizontal, in a hospital gown, staring at ceiling tiles that haven't been updated since 1976. I remember my friend Harold, 84 years old, sharp mind, classical pianist. He could still explain the difference between Chopin and Schumann with tears in his eyes. But one day, he tripped on a rug and broke his wrist. And you know what he said? Falling in front of your cat is more humiliating than falling in front of people. That cat never looked at him the same way again. And sure, he laughed about it, but underneath, he was shaken. Not by the pain, but by the betrayal. I thought I could trust my legs, he said. I've known them for 84 years. That's the part we don't talk about. After a fall, it's not just your body that tightens up, it's your spirit. You begin to question everything. The stairs, the shoes, the dog, your own body. So what do? You sit. You avoid walking. And the less you move, the weaker you get. It's like your muscles say, oh, you're not using us anymore, we'll just shrink then. But here's the Dharma tucked inside all this. Groundedness isn't just about balance, it's about presence. It's about coming into the moment with both feet and all of your awareness. Not rushing ahead, not hesitating behind, just here, alive. And here's the fun part. Science backs this up. Practices like Tai Chi, Qigong, even just mindful walking help reduce fall risk. Not by turning you into an Olympic gymnast, but by reconnecting you to your body's inner compass. Your center, your breath, your place in space. And no, you don't need to lift dumbbells shaped like Buddha heads. Just strengthen your legs, engage your core. Balance on one foot while brushing your teeth. Just don't sue me if you fall doing it. Now, let's talk about the jungle you call home. That throw rug in the hallway? Sabotage. That wobbly towel rack you lean on after showers? A betrayal waiting to happen. That dim light by the stairs? A trap set by your 40-year-old self who used to see in the dark. So, do a fall audit. Walk through your house like you're visiting it for the first time. Fix what needs fixing. Invite a friend to help. Someone who will be honest and say, yeah, this lamp cord is basically a snake. And oh, medications. Let's not skip those. You stand up too fast in the night and suddenly the bathroom becomes a tilt-a-whirl. That's not enlightenment, that's orthostatic hypotension. Many common prescriptions affect balance. Ask your doctor. Ask again. This is your temple, after all. Most importantly, don't stop moving. Fear is understandable, but don't let it be your master. Move slowly, mindfully, with love. Because here's the secret, my friend. The ground is not your enemy. It is what holds you, catches you, supports your every step and misstep. So walk gently, stand tall, and honor the earth beneath your feet, because whether you're on a path, a prayer rug, or just padding to the fridge in slippers, that's still part of the practice. 3. Respiratory illness, the breath you didn't know you needed. Let's try something. Take a breath with me, not one of those quick, anxious, did I leave the stove on breaths. I mean a real one. A deep, slow, belly-filling breath. The kind of breath that says, "Ah, I'm still here." Now imagine if that breath were hard to take, like trying to inhale through a coffee stirrer. Suddenly, you realize this thing you've done since birth, without even thinking, isn't guaranteed. That's respiratory illness. It doesn't arrive with a grand entrance. It just starts stealing your breath, that one invisible moment at a time. And by the time you notice, you're sitting on the edge of your bed, wheezing like an old accordion, wondering how air got so complicated. See, the lungs, they're not just balloons in your chest. They're memory keepers. They've carried you through gasps of awe, sobs of heartbreak, 1,000 sighs of "oh well," and that one time you laughed so hard you pulled a muscle. They've processed love letters and exhaust fumes, birthday candles and cigarette smoke, the smell of fresh laundry in questionable public restrooms, and like all faithful servants, they rarely complain until they start breaking down. Now let's talk science. There's this thing called COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Sounds like a bureaucratic nightmare, but it's really just your lungs saying, we've been through a lot and we're tired. Emphysema, chronic bronchitis, asthma that won't quit. They're not the result of age. They're the result of accumulation. Years of breathing in the world without always knowing what was in it. And then there's pneumonia, which sounds like a polite Victorian ailment until it knocks you off your feet, especially in older adults. You think you've got a cold, and suddenly you're on oxygen in the ER wondering what just happened. I think of my neighbor Rita. She was 79, loved her tomato plants more than most people love their grandkids. Caught a little bug in the fall, brushed it off. It's just a sniffle, she said. A week later, hospital bed. Oxygen. Confused and exhausted. She came home, but she never bounced back. She said, I didn't know breathing could take so much out of me. That's the thing, we don't know until it's hard. Now here's where Buddhism steps in. Not with a prescription, but with a practice. Mindfulness of breath, not just to relax. To notice. When you breathe with awareness, you notice the subtleties, the shortness on the stairs, the wheeze that wasn't there last week, the shallow inhale when you're anxious. These aren't problems, they're invitations, and your lungs, they like to move. Not CrossFit, just movement. Walk, stretch, hum. Sing your favorite ridiculous song. The more your lungs expand, the more alive they stay. And your home could be heaven or hazard. Dust, mold, that candle that smells like a gift shop exploded. They may seem harmless, but your lungs are in there like, seriously? Crack a window. Clean a vent. Use fewer sprays that make your bathroom smell like a tropical lie. And yes, vaccinate. It's not political, it's practical. One little shot can save you from a long stay in a sterile room where the soup never has enough salt. Most of all, treat your breath like a sacred guest. Invite it in. Sit quietly. Let it fill you like sunlight through an open window. Thich Nhat Hanh said, breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. You can do that right now. And if you're breathing, you're healing. So breathe. Not because you have to, but because you get to. 4. Cognitive decline. When the mind starts to wander. The mind, a beautiful, mysterious friend who sometimes forgets where she left her purse. Or the name of that actor, the one with the face. He was in that movie with the other guy. Look, forgetting stuff, that's just being human. I walk into rooms all the time and stand there thinking, was I coming in for socks or salvation? And it turns out, sometimes it's both. But what we're talking about now isn't just misplacing your glasses or repeating a story about 1972 again. We're talking about something deeper. Real cognitive decline. The slow, quiet unraveling of memory, the fraying of orientation, and eventually, if left unguarded, the soft fading of self. It doesn't arrive all at once. It tiptoes in, a name here, a recipe there. You go to pay the phone bill and end up ordering 3 sets of windshield wipers from a catalog that stopped printing in 2006. But here's the good news wrapped in a forgetful little bow. It's not hopeless. Not at all. Because just like your joints, your heart, your karma, the brain responds to love and attention. Let's bring in a little Buddhist flavor here. The Buddha said the mind is like a garden. If you plant seeds of mindfulness, curiosity, compassion, you get blossoms. If you neglect it, the weeds of confusion and distraction grow wild. And let me tell you, those weeds can get tall, especially around election season. Now picture a garden that's 80, 85, maybe even 90 years old. Sure, some of the vines are twisting a little funny. Maybe the cucumbers are shaped like question marks, but it's still alive. And with a little light, a little music, and some metaphorical compost, it still grows. That's your brain. Science calls this neuroplasticity, which basically means your neurons are still out there mingling at the party. They're just a little slower to dance. So what helps? Novelty, movement, social connection, a bit of joyful chaos. Learn something new. Try brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand. Or learn French, even if you forget half of it and just end up saying baguette with confidence. And don't underestimate the power of people. Isolation isn't just lonely, it's brain shrinkage in disguise. Talk to your neighbor, join a group, call your cousin and argue about music, or tell them you love them and see what happens. Human connection is medicine, with side effects like laughter and cookies. Oh, and Dolores. You'd like Dolores. She's 87, runs a poetry group at her retirement center, still flirts with the maintenance guy. She told me, if I stop creating, my brain will think the show's over. Her brain is still very much on stage. Now about food. The brain likes greens, berries, olive oil, not Cheetos. Sorry, I know. The mind diet, aptly named, has shown real results in reducing Alzheimer's risk. So eat like your brain has a yoga mat and listens to jazz. And sleep. Sleep isn't just a nap, it's brain laundry. That's when your mind takes out the trash, files the good stuff, and makes sense of your day. So tuck yourself in like a sacred being, which you are. And if you or someone you love is already forgetting, I want to say this gently. You are not your memory. You are not broken. You are not a burden. You are still here, still worthy, still radiant. Presence doesn't require perfect recall. It just requires your heart to be open. Even if you forget her name, you can still hold your granddaughter's hand. And that's not memory. That's love. So keep planting seeds in your mental garden. Water them with music, puzzles, sunlight, and friendship. Keep dancing, even if you forget the steps. Because the music is still playing. And your soul? It hasn't forgotten a thing. 5. Loneliness. The hidden illness that doesn't show on X-rays. Let's talk about something no one likes to admit. Not gas. We've all made peace with that by now. I mean loneliness. Not the I wish my kids would call more often loneliness. Not the why am I watching the Golden Girls again when I've memorized every episode loneliness. I'm talking about the deep kind. The kind where you could be sitting next to someone on the couch, nodding at the same commercial, and still feel like you're on a raft in the middle of the ocean, waving at life through a fog no one else can see. It's sneaky, isn't it? It doesn't make your chest hurt like heart disease. It doesn't show up on an MRI like a stroke. But it chips away at you just the same. Softly, slowly, like spiritual termites. And here's the kicker. Science finally caught up with the heart. Turns out, chronic loneliness increases your risk of early death by nearly 30%. It messes with your immune system, jacks up your blood pressure, clouds your memory, and makes your joints ache just from the weight of feeling forgotten. It even raises your risk of dementia by 40%. 40%. That's more than bacon, bad genes, and skipping Sudoku combined. But the Buddha, in his infinite clarity, told us this centuries ago. He called it interbeing. It means you are not separate, never have been. You are the rain and the roots and the smile of a stranger. You are your mother's voice. You are the soup your grandmother stirred. You are the sunlight on someone else's windowsill. But loneliness has a way of convincing you otherwise. It whispers, you've been left behind. You're not needed anymore. You're invisible now. I met a man once, Carl, retired school teacher. He said, I've got 5 grown kids. None of them live nearby. Most days it's just me and the wind doesn't ask how I'm doing. Oof. But you know what Carl did? He started writing letters. To his kids, yes, but also to strangers, to old friends, to himself. He joined a weekly storytelling circle. No agenda, just elders sitting in a circle saying, I'm still here and here's who I am. That became his medicine. Because connection can be rebuilt at any age. The soul doesn't come with an expiration date. So, here's your spiritual prescription. Join something. A group, a circle, a class, a choir, even if you can't sing. Especially if you can't sing. Call someone, a neighbor, an old friend, your brother you haven't spoken to since Reagan was president. Doesn't matter if it's awkward. Connection is messy, and that's what makes it real. Write something, a memory, a prayer, a grocery list with bad jokes. Someone out there needs your words, maybe even you. Sit with someone else's loneliness. Volunteer. Read to children. Pet a cat at the shelter. Offer your presence like a warm blanket. And if you can't leave the house, good news. The internet exists. Yes, it's full of cat memes and conspiracy theories, but it's also full of elders. Zooming together in meditation, sharing silence in their pajamas, no pants required. But most of all, please, please remember this. You are not forgotten. You are not a spare part. You are not waiting on the shelf for someone to remember your name. You belong. Even in solitude, you are breathing with the whole world. Every thought you send out lands somewhere. Every kindness you offer, even to yourself, creates a ripple. So tend your inner garden. Water it with laughter, phone calls, music, sunlight, and little notes that say, I'm still here, because you are. And the rest of us, we've been waiting to hear your story. 6. Heart disease. The tired engine we can rebuild. Let's start with a confession most doctors won't say out loud. Your heart is a freaking miracle. Not in a metaphorical greeting card kind of way. I mean in a real, no days off, beating while you sleep kind of way. Think about it. This little fist-sized drum inside your chest has been pounding away since before your first baby photo. No breaks, no vacation days, no union, just pure dedication. And how do we thank it? We ignore it. Until it starts making weird noises during a Netflix binge. We treat it like an old car engine. Don't check under the hood, don't change the oil, and hope it holds out until after Jeopardy. But here's the cosmic joke. Heart disease is still the #1 cause of death after 72, not because the heart gives up, but because we do. Most of us were never taught how to care for our hearts the way we do our houseplants or our dogs. We give our succulents filtered water, classical music, and kind words. Meanwhile, we feed our hearts salt, stress, and sitcom reruns from the 80s. Let's zoom out for a second. In Buddhist psychology, the heart isn't just a muscle. It's the seat of citta, the heart-mind. It's where compassion, connection, and clarity all hang out and braid each other's hair. And guess what? Science backs this up. Loneliness, stress, and unresolved grief aren't just emotional, they're cardiovascular. The American Heart Association even said that chronic isolation is like smoking 15 cigarettes a day. 15. That's not just lonely. That's a spiritual bonfire with no s'mores. So let's talk culprits. High blood pressure. Not just clogged pipes. This is your body's way of saying, I'm running too fast and no one's letting me stop. Diet? Look, none of us were raised on quinoa and flax seeds. We had bacon grease, pie crusts made of lard, and salt with a side of salt. It was delicious. But let's be honest, it clogged our arteries faster than a parade of bacon-wrapped cheese. And then there's the couch, that seductive, nap-happy sponge of inertia. We love it. But sitting too long slows your circulation, weakens your heart, and makes your pants mysteriously shrink. But here's the grace. The heart is forgiving. So forgiving. You can mistreat it for decades and it still says, okay, let's try again. I knew a woman named B, 82 years old. Her doctor told her, you've got serious blockages, not much time left. Bea didn't argue. She got walking, just to the mailbox and back at first. She swapped pork chops for lentils, took up Tai Chi, started breathing like it mattered. 6 months later, her blood pressure dropped. Her energy came back. 2 years later, her cardiologist called her a textbook miracle. Bea just smiled and said, I started treating my heart like it was my friend, not my enemy. So let's do that. Let's stop punishing the heart for trying so hard. Let's walk more, laugh more, eat foods that whisper, I love you. Forgive people, even if they don't deserve it. It's not for them. It's for your arteries. Nap like it's a sacred ritual. Say I'm proud of you to the face in the mirror. Because every single heartbeat is a love letter from your body. And the best way to respond? Listen, gently, gratefully, and maybe with a side of lentil soup. 7. Purpose. The medicine you can't get in a pill bottle. Let me say something that might ruffle a few retirement magazines. The biggest danger after 72 isn't cholesterol. It's forgetting why you're still here. We don't just die from disease. We die from resignation. That slow fade of meaning. The gentle whisper that says, you've done enough. There's nothing left to give. You can rest now forever. But I'm here to remind you, you're not finished. You're ripening. You don't need to be climbing mountains, unless you want to. You don't need to run a nonprofit or write the next great American novel. Purpose doesn't require applause, just a reason to get out of bed with your soul still humming. Now science, bless its earnest little heart, finally agrees. Researchers found that older adults with a sense of purpose slept better, lived longer, and even had lower risk of Alzheimer's and stroke. One Japanese study showed people with ikigai, a reason for being, lived longer even with disease. Why? Because when your body knows it's needed, it keeps showing up. It says, all right, let's roll. We've still got stuff to do. Buddhism, of course, has been gently pointing this all along. It's in right intention and right livelihood, not rules but invitations. Invitations to offer our energy to something bigger than ego, to become vessels of service, presence, joy. And here's the trick aging plays. Your outer roles might fall away. You're no longer the boss, the caregiver, or the planner of family vacations. But what you become instead? You become the elder, the seed keeper, the fire tender. You carry the medicine of how to walk through life and not be owned by it. Let me tell you about Ellen, 88 years old. She started a wisdom-lending library at her retirement home. No books, just stories. Each week, someone would share a memory, a regret, a triumph. The room would fill with laughter, tears, and that rare silence that only comes from listening deeply. Ellen said, we all became real again. Or Frank, 76, couldn't walk far, had neuropathy. But every morning he sat at the window and prayed for 10 people. By name, that's my job now, he said. I show up for love. Now that's purpose, not busy, not impressive, just true. So how do you find yours? Start here. What do I still love? Who needs the wisdom I forgot I had? What would I regret not doing before I head out? What makes time disappear? Then listen, not for a booming voice, just that little tug in your chest, that soft, yes, this. And don't worry about impressing anyone. Purpose might look like feeding birds at the park, teaching your granddaughter how to make soup with too much garlic, calling that old friend who still makes you laugh like a kid, writing your life down before it drifts away like a dream, saying thank you more often than you think you should. Whatever it is, let it come from love. Because here's the wild part. Purpose is medicine. Not the kind in a bottle, but the kind that realigns your cells, lifts your spirit, and gives your days that golden edge. You're not here just to pass the time. You're here to transmit something, a certain way of being, a kindness, a presence, a story only you can tell. So pick up your thread, dear one. Stitch something sacred. This is not your ending. This is your unwinding, your soul mid-song. Well, my friend, here we are. We've walked together through the 7 doorways. 7 soft knocks on the soul's front porch. Stroke, falls, breath, memory, loneliness, the heart, and finally that shining thread called purpose. These aren't just medical facts. They're reminders, whispers from your body and spirit gently saying, hey, you're still here, and that means something. We learned that the stroke doesn't always shout, it slips in when no one's listening. A fall isn't just physical, it's a crisis of trust in the body you've always lived in. Breath is more than survival, it's prayer, presence, and purification. The mind may wander, but the soul never forgets who you are. Loneliness isn't a weakness, it's a signal that you were made for connection. The heart, it's not just an organ, it's a love engine that needs your care. And purpose is your lighthouse in the fog, your soul's way of saying, we're not done yet. So here's the fortune cookie, if you will. You are not broken, you are blooming. You are not past your prime. You are entering a quieter, wiser season. And the choices you make, how you eat, breathe, walk, forgive, connect, they are all tiny love letters to your future self. Now, if something in this video stirred you even a little, if it reminded you of who you are underneath the labels and the prescriptions, go ahead and click that like button. It's not for the algorithm, it's for the energy we're building together. And if you want to be part of this little sangha of elders and seekers, subscribe to the channel. We're not chasing numbers, we're weaving a community. And if you're feeling generous, drop a comment below. Tell us one thing you're going to water in your garden this week. A new habit, a phone call, a nap, a poem. We read every word, truly. And if you're feeling really generous, share this with someone you love, someone who needs to hear. You're still needed, you're still medicine. So until next time, take care of your breath, your steps, your stories, and the sacred space between heartbeats. You're not just getting older, you're becoming timeless.